Hi, I'm Ashley, and this is Crafty with Ashley, where I just try to inspire creativity and personal expression. For me, that's usually painting, baking, and crocheting. And today we're going to talk about crocheting. So we're going to talk about crochet injuries. And as a physical therapist, I've run across people that have gotten injured from a lot of different activities. And I don't know if you know, but overuse injuries are actually super common, and really any repetitive task can, but doesn't have to, but can cause an injury. And if you think about crocheting, it is definitely a very repetitive task. So today we're going to talk about the risk factors, some prevention tips, and the treatment of overuse injuries for crocheters. And then also, just so that we don't get down about one of our favorite hobbies, my favorite hobby, I'm going to go into many scientifically proven benefits of crocheting. So definitely the benefits outweigh the risks. So we'll get into just a couple of those, not very in depth, but we're really going to talk about injuries. Okay, so first let's look at the risk factors. Okay, so there's two main reasons that crocheting puts us at risk of injury. So the first one is repetition, and this is probably the one that we think about more when we hear the term overuse injury, right? Overuse, repetition, right? Doing the same thing over and over. So definitely crocheting is a repetitive movement. We can get into crocheting and just keep going, and it's the same movement over and over. The second thing, and something that is kind of less understood and less commonly talked about when it comes to overuse injuries, activities that combine different movements actually put us at greater risk of injury than single movement activities. So something like just moving your arm up and down repeatedly or whatever is just one joint moving, it's going in the same direction every time. But crocheting is different. When we are crocheting, we combine different movements. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them here. So first, you think about kind of the most obvious thing that we're doing is we're holding our crochet hook, right? So we kind of have this mass flexion of our fingers. So we're gripping our hook and we're holding it. And then we get into the wrist movements. So our wrists can move in a lot of different directions, right? We can basically go in a whole circle. So the main ones are flexion, extension, and then ulnar deviation and radial deviation. And for crocheting, we're combining all of those movements. So again, I'm holding my hook, so mass grasp here, and then we're starting in relative wrist extension, and then I'm gonna put my hook through. I'm gonna go into wrist flexion to put my hook through, and then I'm coming into radial deviation, so kind of toward the thumb side, and I'm wrapping my hook, right? So I'm doing like a little rotation, and then I'm pulling it through, and I'm going into wrist extension and ulnar deviation, and then I'm kind of repeating that kind of rotation. And that doesn't even get into what's happening up here kind of in the forearm and elbow, and then even some of the shoulder. So all of those combined movements definitely put us at higher risk of injury. It just adds a lot more stress and strain in all of those directions. So depending on the techniques used, you can get injury in a lot of different areas. Some people even get some stuff up in the shoulder, arm, neck. I kind of won't go into those, but one of the kind of main ones that we think about are more the elbow, forearm, hand, right? So you can get what's called tennis elbow, and that is pain out here on the outside, and it's typically associated with tennis. That's why it's called that. But you can get it from crocheting. You can also get what's called golfer's elbow, which is pain more on the inside of the elbow. You can get carpal tunnel syndrome, so that's pain here at the wrist from a specific cause. We're not going to get into all of the details, but basically if you have pain here at the wrist, that can happen. And then you can get what's called bursitis. Many different places in our body, there's these little fluid-filled sacs that are kind of cushioning, and they can get inflamed and swollen, and that'll cause pain. And so you can get bursitis. You can get even some like hand pain, where you know, a lot of people talk about, oh, crocheting led to arthritis. For all of these, the tips for preventing are all the same. So let's go into how do we prevent our overuse injuries, right? So there's 5 main tips that I have, and things you should do to prevent overuse injuries. So the first one is take breaks. Now, crocheting is again, it's repetitive. It's mundane isn't the right word because I love it, and mundane sounds negative, but it's repetitive, right? And you can really get engrossed in it and just keep going. You could easily be going on a 5-hour road trip and crochet the whole time, right? And just marathon crocheting. That's not the best idea. So in general, it's recommended that we take about a 10-minute break every hour that we're crocheting. So, you know, get up, move around, get something to drink, go to the bathroom. But about 10 minutes every hour is sufficient. According to the Mayo Clinic, to develop an overuse injury, you have to be doing that motion or those combined motions for more than an hour a day. So if you're doing less than an hour, you're not really at a big risk here. But if you're doing more than that, you're gonna wanna take a break every hour. So the second tip I have is to ensure proper posture when you're crocheting. So a couple things you want to think about. Everything that's happening up here is going to affect down here, okay? So we call it kind of up the chain in physical therapy terms, but everything up the chain affects what happens down the chain. So you want to make sure that everything up here is set nicely, you're nice and supported. So maybe you're, you know, have an armrest for your elbow to be on and supported, or you're putting some pillows under your elbows. I sometimes would use my breastfeeding pillow to support my elbows when I was crocheting, but you can just use a couple pillows. But that gets you in a nice relaxed position with your upper body, with your shoulders, and then you want your hands and your arms close to your body. You don't want to be reaching out like this while you're crocheting, because that's going to put a lot more strain through really your whole arm, but wrists and hands too. And then you want to make sure you have good lighting, because if you are having to like bring that project closer to your face, you're kind of hunching yourself in, right? And you're staring at your little project right here. If you have bad lighting, you're going to need it closer. So you want to keep it farther away. You just want to kind of glance down at it. You're not hunching over it. So again, if you wear glasses, you know, you're probably going to wear them when you're doing your project so that you're not having to be like way up here. Same with readers, right? If you're wearing readers, you don't want to have to be way out here to see your project. You want just right in the middle. So wear your glasses probably if you need them. But those are kind of some tips just to maintain good posture when you're crocheting. The third tip is to stretch. I'm going to show you just a few different stretches that you can do for your wrists and hands. I'm not going to get into stretches for your neck or shoulders or back, which you can definitely do as well, but just a few for your hands. So the first one is just open and close your hands as nice and big as you can. When you open, you're bringing your fingers apart, not together, and you're really stretching them nice and wide, and then you're squeezing nice and tight. You can do thumb in, you can do thumb out, but you're doing that. And then the next one is just with a closed fist. You can rotate your wrists, nice big slow movements. You're going to go both directions, okay? And just rotate those wrists and you'll feel them start to loosen up. And the next one is getting wrist extension. So you're stretching out this bottom part of your wrist. And so you can do this with your hands together. So you're going to go into like a prayer position stretch. So hands together, and then you're going to pull your elbows apart. And then you can even kind of bring your hands down to get more force through this part of your hand. So you're bringing your hands down and then you're holding that. This one you can do one at a time if you want, so you can kind of bring your hand out and pull it this way, or just kind of push it like this. Either of those is fine, or you can do them together. A next one that you can do is just the opposite. So you're going to stretch the back part of your wrist and you're going to bring the back of your hands together and then pull your elbows down, right? And that's going to stretch out through the back side of your wrist. Again, you can do this one at a time if you want. And you might feel something a little bit different when you do it out here versus here. And so do whatever, you feel like is stretching the spot that you feel like it needs stretched. It's not super scientific when you're stretching. Everybody's built just a little bit differently. Pull of muscles is just a little bit different. So it's kind of okay, I'm kind of moving around and like right here, I feel it quite a lot through kind of the top of my arm right here. So that might be where I want to do it. Play with it, whatever feels good, basically. But you can do those 4 stretches, and you can combine this with our tip number 1 of taking a break, right? So when you take a break, you can just throw in some of these stretches and get your hands and wrists moving in a little bit different way. So our 4th tip, okay? So when you're crocheting, you can switch it up. Okay, so by switch it up, I mean you can work on a few different projects at a time, right? So maybe you're working on a project with a large crochet hook, right? Thick yarn. Or you're working on a project that is using thread and a tiny little steel crochet hook, right? So just with how we're holding our hook, you can see that this tiny hook is going to result in different forces than this larger hook. So this is lighter, but you're holding kind of a smaller object. This one's a little bit heavier, a little bit heftier, but you're gripping a larger object. So you're gonna notice different forces. And then the materials that you're using, I don't have any crochet thread with me right now, but I do have this thick yarn, right? So when we're holding a thicker yarn, our fabric is thicker, heftier. When we're doing the little thread projects, we have a really thin yarn. This isn't thread, but this is a lot thinner than that other yarn. So you can see that holding a project like this is going to be different also. So subtle differences, but it will make a difference. So you can switch back and forth. Another way to kind of switch it up, I'm going to show you on the large hook just because it's easier to see. You can switch the way that you hold your hook. This one's a little bit harder because we all kind of have a natural way that we prefer to hold the hook, but if you can switch it up, it'd be good for the different forces. So the 2 main holds are the pencil grip, and just literally think about how you would pick up a pencil, right, or a pen and write. So you're holding it like that. Your hook is over your hand, and you have maybe 1 or 2 fingers on top of the hook, however you are comfortable, however you normally hold your pencil. The other option is the knife grip, okay? So with the knife grip, the hand is over the hook under, and you're holding on top of the hook like this. And so you just thinking about the way that you would chop, right? So hold it like that. Now there's a couple options for this too. Now, if you're a chef, don't yell at me because I know you should not hold your knife like this with your finger on top, but for crochet hooks, it is an option. You can kind of have your finger on top to guide where you're putting your hook, or you can kind of wrap your fingers around, right? So those are kind of some different options. But you can see, just look at the position of my wrist, okay? So I'm in the knife hold, right? My wrist is nice and flat. Everything's kind of straight. If I'm in the pencil grip, I have natural wrist extension, okay? So neither is wrong, but you can see how if I switch from this hold to this hold, I automatically have a different line of pull and I'm using slightly different muscles. So being able to switch it up in that sense is helpful too. Another way that you can switch it up is you can actually switch hobbies, right? So I know we're talking about crocheting and I am a crocheter and I love crocheting, but I have other hobbies that I like to do too. So for me, that is painting and baking, which I say in my intro. Those are kind of my creative outlets. That's what I like to do. I also like to read. I hate to exercise, but as I said, I'm a physical therapist, so I do it because I'm supposed to, and I know it's good for me, and I like to set a good example. But, you know, so getting out and doing other things besides maybe your main or your primary hobby is helpful. So if you don't have any other hobbies, you might want to look at picking something up. Like I said, for me, I love to paint, so I'll crochet a little bit, I'll paint a little bit, and switching it up throughout the day or the week is going to be really beneficial to help prevent injuries from any of your activities, right? So if you don't have another hobby, maybe you want to pick up another kind of needlework hobby, right? Like knitting or cross stitch or needlepoint or something, even sewing, right? Just another kind of needlework hobby. Or you want to switch it up completely like I do. I don't knit or do needlework. I don't do those other kind of yarn or thread hobbies, but I do love painting. So if you're interested in learning how to paint, I have a really cute watercolor tutorial for making a cute birthday card, and you can check that out here. You don't need a lot of materials for watercolor, so it's kind of nice. But if you're not, I'm not offended. But if you want to check that out, it's here. But maybe you do pick up painting or baking or reading or something else, you know, that you can switch it up with. Tip number 5, think about your tension. Okay, so when especially beginners, but even experienced crocheters too, sometimes we are holding our materials so tightly that we're at higher risk of injury, okay? So think about the beginner just learning how to put the hook in the right spot, learning how to manipulate the hook to wrap the yarn over it, all of those things. You're going to naturally kind of have a little bit more of a stress response. So you're holding your materials tighter. You're really focusing on, okay, I need to put it through the hole. I need to wrap it around, and I'm holding it really tight. And then your fabric's tighter, so it takes more force to get through the stitch, all of these things, okay? And so just think about holding your materials with a lighter touch, a little bit more natural, a little bit looser, okay? And that'll help prevent injuries. So if you do get an overuse injury from crocheting, and this is going to be super quick, I know this video is kind of long, but if you do get an overuse injury, the treatment is pretty consistent across the board for all overuse injuries. Now, caveat, I am not your physical therapist. I am a physical therapist. I'm not your physical therapist. This is not a personalized treatment plan. This is just basic recommendations. If you're having a consistent issue with pain, you're going to want to seek out treatment, because a treatment plan that is specific to your injury and your location of injury, all of that, the chronicity, all of that is going to be very important. So again, this is just basic recommendations, but the treatment is going to include resting, icing, stretching, and strengthening. So the first one, resting, it can be either total rest or relative rest. So that'll depend on the severity of your injury and how much of the activity you were doing beforehand. But total rest is just you can't do it for however long, you know, a week or two. Or relative rest is you're decreasing the amount of time you're doing the activity and increasing the number of breaks you're taking. The second thing is icing. Icing can reduce the swelling and inflammation and help speed up the healing process. So it'll decrease pain as well. The stretching, actually the same stretches that we talked about in prevention, can be used to help treat some of the pain from an overuse injury. There are other stretches, but those are going to be some really common ones. And then the final step is strengthening, and this one is probably the most important step for preventing re-injury. So you're going to need to strengthen everything that is around the injured site, but also everything like we talked about up the chain, so that you don't get re-injured. let's just really quick, I know it's kind of long, but stick with me because I don't want you to miss this. Really quick, we're going to talk about a few of the benefits of crocheting. It's not all doom and gloom, okay? Yes, we can get injured, but if we take the steps to prevent it, it's not very likely. And so some of the benefits of crochet, and these have been scientifically proven, are crocheting can reduce anxiety, can reduce depression, it can delay or reduce dementia and cognitive decline. It can reduce irritability, and it can decrease stress. It can also decrease, it's been proven that crocheting can decrease chronic pain. So tons of benefits. There's more than this. They're all very well researched. And if you're interested in looking at the benefits of crocheting, I actually wrote a full article on this on my blog. I have a link below, or you can just Google it. Crafty with Ashy, is crocheting a good hobby? And you'll find it. But I kind of detailed many of the benefits of crocheting. I linked back to the different research studies and kind of looked at more of the scientific information behind these benefits. So I really hope you learned something. I hope this, taught you something on how to prevent injuries, but also why crocheting is good. And if you have any other questions, just let me know in the comments below. I hope you have an awesome day. Have a good one.